Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the RAS Project, a podcast covering no bullshit, 100% real, raw, and unfiltered rags to riches stories from amazing human beings around the world with emphasis on life, personal development, family, tech, and marketing. Of course, I'm your host, Ivan Temelkov, and in a little bit here, I will be joined by my amazing co-host Courtney Turner. But before she joins me, as I'm waiting on her to hop in the studio here, first of all, this is the first live broadcast that we've done since February 22nd, I believe. The last live broadcast of the Roz Project that we did was on February 22nd, based on my record. So, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of things are happening. A lot of things are happening. A lot of great things are happening. And I'm beyond ecstatic to share with you guys. In fact, one of the things that I've been working on, and this has been a dream of mine for about 3 years now, is actually coming to fruition, and I'll be able to share on social media later on this week. But not quite yet. Not quite yet. Other things I wanted to mention also before we kick things off here. So I feel like we are finally out of the woods with this winter thing, at least here in the Midwest. It's been crazy weather. I know we've got almost a foot and a half of snow about a month ago, roughly. One of the biggest blizzards and storms that we have seen in the Midwest in recent years, in fact. And now we're up in like 40, 50, 60, even mid 70-degree weather. It's crazy. I don't know about you guys, but my sinuses felt like they were going to explode. I shit you not. And I guess that's what happens when you get old, right? Is just that, let's just say that your health doesn't get any better. But that is one of the things that I'm really excited about, because I've talked about this also in the podcast before, that I've been a cyclist for about 8 years now, and I'm getting excited as the weather is getting warmer outside, because I can get out there, get on the trail, put the pedal to the metal, so to speak, and get some miles in, In fact, actually, last week I was able to put in about 11 miles on the bike, and I got to tell you, it was absolutely invigorating. Absolutely invigorating. And in fact, that is one of the things that we're going to talk about, is why was it so invigorating in the topic of this show, this episode, and that is the war against yourself. Why should you care? Why are you fighting a war against yourself? And what does that really mean? And what do you need to do to win that war? And I'm actually going to be awaiting my co-host, Courtney Turner, to be joining me here in a little bit before we jumpstart that discussion. But, other things that I also wanted to share with you guys, we've got great content that's lined up here in the next few weeks. Also, some great things that we are doing with Razor Sharp Digital, my company. We're really going into the video realm of things. And I'm pretty excited about that, because it's something that I really wanted to emphasize upon. And on that note, speaking of video, in 2020, one of the biggest things that really helped me grow my business was the fact that I doubled down on personal branding. And I know a lot of people will say, Ivan, why are you making these crazy videos, man? And why are you wasting your time? Like, there's no payoff in that. Well, there's a huge payoff in that. Why is there such huge payoff in personal branding? Well, we do business with people we like and trust. So the way you build likability, if you want to establish likability in the social media space, is you create more transparency around yourself. You expose the vulnerability, which is something that a lot of people are actually uncomfortable in doing. And honestly, here's what I found is a lot of entrepreneurs specifically that are not investing in personal branding or doing it poorly, is the reason they are doing it that way is because, in part, they're afraid to be vulnerable. They're afraid to share certain things online because they're afraid of being judged. And I was one of those people. For many years, I was afraid what people would think of me if I said something, if I acted in a certain way, if it wasn't up to their expectations. So that is probably one of the biggest things, that has been extremely, extremely, extremely beneficial. And if you're watching this or listening to this episode, which, by the way, the audio portion of this episode, 110, wow, 110 live episodes of the RAS Project will be available later on today in audio on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Pandora, Spotify. You can check it out. And if you haven't subscribed, then what are you waiting for? Just go and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll be notified every time we're live in video and audio. And I see Courtney is in the studio. She is in the room. So let me go ahead and bring her in. Good morning, Courtney. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. So I was waiting for you to join us this morning. I was
Sorry.
chatting. Oh, it's okay. It's okay. It's Monday, right?
Yeah.
um, I was just talking about how the fact that the last live show that we did was nearly a month ago.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like, so many things are happening. By the way, how are you this morning? How's your Monday going?
It's going well. I mean, Monday, whatever day, I feel like I'm really busy. So the days are super blending, and
Yeah.
it's all good. A
Yeah.
lot of it, but yeah. So I've just been
You're
very busy.
you're fighting the good fight, like all of us, right?
Yes, I'm definitely fighting the good fight.
And that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and I know you have a lot of things happening for you, and that's
Yeah,
exciting. That's
yeah.
exciting. I know you've been working really, really hard in 2020 to really bring to fruition a lot of different things, a lot of business ideas, a lot of goals and dreams that you've had. And on top of it all, you're moving to Nashville, right?
We don't know yet. So it's a really crazy seller's market.
Uh huh.
I actually lost the house that I was trying to put an offer in on.
Oh
Um,
no.
yeah, yeah. So, which is fine, it wasn't meant to be. And
Right.
I may treat this more like a research kind of experience, getting a sense of what I want. Now I really have a good sense of what it is I want and what I'm looking for. But I don't know if I'm going to dive into the market just yet because it's a crazy market. Things are very overpriced.
Yeah.
We're getting into bidding wars, so it's very rare that the price listed is the price that you're going to get it for.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just it's definitely been an experience, but it shows that my thoughts on like where things are in the country was pretty accurate. People are fleeing the blue states, they're fleeing the
Yeah.
cities.
Yeah.
I mean, these properties are not in the city. I'm not looking at Nashville. So the fact that yeah.
Okay.
So that's really crazy, right? To think about that
Hmm.
it's not even in the city and people are getting into bidding wars. It's mostly outside of the city. I mean, the city,
Yeah.
Nashville is booming and, it's definitely a crazy seller's market in here too, like inside the city. I'm staying inside Nashville, but
Yeah.
properties I'm looking at are not in the city. I think I might be done with that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, I'm excited for you because I know you were talking about relocating and sort of turning a page in the book of Courtney, so to
yeah,
speak. And that's really exciting, and I truly hope it works out. It's interesting. Ironically enough, you were talking about it's really a seller's market. It
yeah,
really is because there's just so much shifting happening with people. But it's interesting you said that you're getting into bidding wars because we're looking to purchase a property later this year for the family. To call it the dream home, and I knew that I was going to be up against something like that
yeah,
because it's just in part I think it's getting so saturated as well. And so many people are also wanting to purchase because it is a seller's market, like you said. But as a result, it's creating so much friction and difficulty. Like you said, you had put in a bid for a house that you wanted, and then you ended up losing that bid.
I
So now it's
lost
just
it, and you know how crazy it is that this shows you what a seller's market is. I lost it to
mhm,
somebody. It was only on the market for less than a day. The other person bid They put it all cash offer, no contingencies, no inspection.
Oh my God.
Talking about. Yeah. And another property I was looking at, like it's new construction. You don't even get to see the house. The builders will not give you option on the fixtures, and you have 48 hours to put in your bid, and whoever gets the highest bid gets it. It closes out. You don't even see it.
That is
That's
crazy.
bizarre. Yeah, it's crazy. And this is not like something it's certainly not like something I've witnessed. And I used to work in real estate. So I worked in real estate in New York City. So, it's not a market I'm totally, ignorant to. I have some awareness. I certainly haven't been in the market for a long time, but yeah, I definitely haven't seen anything like this. And I don't have a crystal ball, but I do think it's a bubble, and I do think it will burst. I just don't know when. It could be 6 months, it could be a few years. You never know. So
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. So speaking of changes and everything that's happening today, did you notice something different about me today, by the way?
something different about you.
Yes. That's the riddle of this morning. So I'm wearing a blue shirt, which I
Yeah,
traditionally
that was the first thing that came to my mind. I was like, wait, is he talking about the color of his shirt?
Yes, yes. And the reason I brought this up is because I traditionally wear white shirts, as you've seen.
Right.
It's kind of like my mantra.
You've worn black shirts too.
I have occasionally. I have very occasionally. In fact, one of the only actually. I have 3 black shirts. Actually, the reason why I mentioned this, I have 3 black shirts. One of them is it's got the phone number, which by the way, people can text 314-916-4875 as well. That's one of the t-shirts. The other one is, I think one is a First Form and one is an Arte shirt. But the reason I brought this up is because I traditionally wear white shirts. But get this. Out of the 20 white shirts that I own or so, they're all dirty. So this is the only clean. This is the only clean t-shirt, hence why it's blue.
Well, I feel you on that. I'm on week 3 of travel. So, when I was at my mom, she was nice enough to do some laundry for me. But I'm looking at my suitcase, and the laundry pile is definitely rivaling the non-laundry pile, we'll just say.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel you. I feel like the entrepreneurial journey is definitely a roller coaster. And let's just say that, I'm one of those people that I less and less care now more than ever about my physical, like what clothes I wear. I just wear what's comfortable.
Right.
Literally, it's like what makes me comfortable. That's why white t-shirts and jogger pants actually is like my thing. Literally, I wear jogger pants and my black shoes and white t-shirts just about everywhere. And people kind of, and I think this is important, because I think as an entrepreneur is you have to feel comfortable in the clothing that you're in, because that kind of in part sets kind of the tone for your day, right?
I have strong opinions on this, actually. I feel we're very much in this postmodernist era where it is about, what we call it, like debasement and destruction as opposed to elevation and creation. And part of that you see in people's attire, so I'm from New York. I grew up right outside New York City. And for most of my life, I wanted to be in fashion. I think it was my 12th birthday, I actually did a fashion show for my birthday party. It was right across the street from one of my favorite stores. They lent me all these clothing, some of which I purchased. And there was an Italian restaurant across the street when I was 12. So, and I created a runway, and, we modeled their clothes. Like, fashion was something I always had a tremendous passion for. One day I'm going to have a petite line of ready to wear. There's lots of petite, like, work clothes and that sort of thing. Not a whole lot of petite ready to wear. And so I say all this to say that it's something that I am very passionate about. And it's not because of people think of fashion as being frivolous. But the truth of the matter is that it is about how you're presenting yourself. And I think in today's world of the postmodern world, people walk around in sweats. And not to say that that's never okay. There's certainly times that I'm guilty of this, but I I don't think that it's okay to go to the theater in sweats. I don't think it's okay to
Mm,
go to. I'm not a churchgoer, but if you were to go to church, I don't think that's appropriate. There's how you put yourself together is an element of that putting effort, and
yeah.
it's respect, and it is a self-expression. And I think it's very important. And I think we've lost so much of it. And it's actually one of the things I most look forward to. I'm looking at lots of different places, but Florida was one of the places I was looking at. And what everybody's like, oh, well, the weather. And I was like, that's actually not as much of an appeal for me because you don't
Hmm.
need rest. Tank tops and shorts is not fashion. That's not style. It's just fun, and
Yeah.
it's fun. We all love to, hang out at the beach. And I live on the beach. I love the beach, but
Yeah.
it's not, it's not fashion, and it's not elegant. And
Hmm.
I really miss that. And even New York is losing that. And I think it's really sad.
No, that's a really good point, Courtney, and I'm glad you brought that up because I think as a society, in part, we're becoming too lazy. But you made a good point about like you're not going to wear sweats to the theater, right? And it's I think and there's a lot of people, especially I think in American culture, is just that I'm going to wear sweats, to the theater because I'm comfortable. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. It's like there's certain places where and maybe I've become too accustomed to like t-shirts and jogger pants, also, which I'm just as guilty because if I was to, here's an example, if I was to take, Valentine's Day, so we went out to dinner with my wife actually, and like I put on something more presentable because we went to a restaurant where I dropped $200 on dinner basically. So I was like, this was like a more finesse, was looking out on the lake, the environment was really, it's the type of restaurant that they have like weddings and such. It's like a little bit more upper scale, right? It's not like, you're going down to McDonald's to get some fast food or something. It's like more of it's the experience. And so, but I agree with you. Is like, I wouldn't have walked in there with jogger pants and a white t shirt.
I hope not. If I were your wife, I might reconsider things if you did.
I know, right? And
I know
it's,
about us, yeah.
yeah, so it's you're absolutely right, and I think as a culture we become like so accustomed to that, like we just I think some people just don't put in the effort. They just don't recognize because, like you mentioned, I think you have a deep appreciation for fashion. I think a lot of people, just like I'll just wear whatever's comfortable, right? And I don't know if that's necessarily true. You know?
Yeah, and I think that it's not just about fashion. A lot of it is about
Mhm.
respect. In olden days, people would get dressed just to walk up and down Fifth Avenue or Madison
Yeah,
Avenue. Like that was just to go walking. They would get dressed and put on their, Sunday's best or whatever
yeah,
the event may be.
yeah,
And there is something to be said for that. It is about I we're in today's culture. It's the way people interact with each other is
yeah,
so it it's so debased. I think
yeah,
because of the advent of social media and all the technology, people don't engage in as much interpersonal interaction. And
yeah,
when you're in person, there is an element of you want to put your best foot forward. That's not that's not the same thing as like a desperate need to be liked. Or I think we've gone to the other extreme where people are like, don't worry about whether people like you, just do whatever makes you feel good. Well, we're social creatures. Like there's a
yeah.
happy medium. Like don't compromise who you are. Don't be disingenuous, but also don't be like, don't be a jerk to other people. And other people don't need to see you in your pajamas any more than other people need to smell your unbrushed teeth breath. It's just disrespectful. So
It's so ironic you talked about this because you said pajamas. Like I know when I go to a gas station, and I hardly ever go to a gas station late at night. It's usually to fill up my wife's car or something for the next day. So it'll be like 9 or 10 o'clock, and then you'll see someone strolling in their pajamas into the gas station. I'm just like, what the hell? Like, did you forgot to just get dressed? Like going into the gas station. I mean, you're right. It is disrespectful, is because I don't want to see you in your pajamas and just like in the gas station. It's like and it's not about, to me personally, it's not as much about disrespect to me, but it's, do you respect yourself enough to put that
Yeah,
effort in?
exactly.
And
And,
if
and
you
that's
don't,
exactly it. It's
then
about self-respect.
yeah,
That's really what it is. Self-respect requires a little grooming, a little bit of self-care. And,
exactly, exactly.
people think self-love is like all this for like, I just love myself and I spend all day in the spa. That's not self-love. Like self-love
Yeah,
is a little tough love. And, it's doing the hard work and holding yourself accountable for things and caring about yourself enough to do so. You wouldn't go 5 years without making a doctor's or dental appointment, so why would you? And there's always exceptions. I'm not saying that, I
yeah,
certainly don't spend every day like fully decked out, but to never do it and to go out into public situations where you're constantly in your sweats, and especially women, like, not brushing their hair, never putting on makeup. It's just, I think there's been a real, a loss of, I, it is self-respect, and it is this
mm,
desire to elevate.
yeah,
Why not put your best foot forward? That's not. I think we've gone so far from one extreme to the other. There's such a backlash against, like, the model perfect, and what you see on the magazines, or the hyper photoshopped images on social media, and
yeah,
that's not what I'm saying you should aspire to. Everybody knows that that's an illusion, but that doesn't mean you don't want to be the best you can be, for the same reason that you work on your business, the same reason, you take care of your health, you go to the gym, or engage in some sort of fitness practice. It's for
yeah,
all the same reasons. So,
yeah. It's so ironic as we just kind of chatted over the last 5-10 minutes about some of these things, because we've naturally segued into the
I
topic I
know.
actually wanted to talk about today, which is the war against yourself. And you talked about the fact that I think a lot of people are just not putting an emphasis or not stressing the importance of, like, how they want to present themselves, or what truly matters to them, because their judgment, their decision making is so clouded by social media and what everybody else is doing, and paying attention to, okay, well, it's okay to go to a gas station in PJs. No, it's not. Just because you saw somebody else, it's not. It's okay to do this because everybody else is doing. No, it's not. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I think too many people are having a hard time making decisions for themselves and determining what's important to them, because they're so worried about acceptance from the world, or worried about judgment from the world. I know you just did a podcast with Zuby, actually today,
Yeah.
who's a very well-known rapper, and I really enjoyed actually that episode. For everybody listening and watching, make sure you subscribe to the Courtney Turner podcast as well. Amazing, amazing podcast as well. But that's some of the social and the cultural issues that we're currently facing, that I think really attribute to figuring out, who does Courtney want to be? What does
Mhm.
Ivan want to be? And not worrying about, what does the world want you to be, or what does your parents want you to be, or your friends, or even loved ones.
Mhm.
And I think that's probably one of the biggest issues right now, is just, are people afraid to think for themselves? Are they afraid, to be judged? Are they afraid to make a mistake? God forbid, because we're such perfect creatures, right? As
Yeah.
human beings. But that's what I wanted to spend some time talking about, because I'm seeing a lot of that, Courtney. And I think now going into 2021, there's the social, there's the cultural, there's the civil, there's just so many things. And I think a lot of people are afraid almost. I feel like there's a huge sense of fear that's been, like, implanted on people, to where they're not really pushing to figure out, like you said, because being an Eastern European, we're talking about fashion, right? I remember, growing up, is that I remember, like, my parents getting dressed up. I remember when my grandmother was alive, when my grandfather was alive, they would get dressed up, for, like, I remember them doing that. And to me, it registered this thing that, to say it in layman's terms, is that if I'm going somewhere that's, like, more, official type, is that it will make sense, not to wear like shorts or something, or just
Right.
jeans, like be more presentable. Like even going out with family, I remember like having family dinners, which happened once in a blue moon. It's like we would actually get dressed up, or like even going to church, getting dressed up, right? Like not strolling to church. And mind you, the last few times I was at church, I've seen people strolling with shorts, and I'm just like, it immediately sets this tone that it's acceptable to people. People think that it's acceptable to just wear jeans or shorts, and don't bother getting dressed up, or don't bother thinking for yourself. Just do what everybody else is doing.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's far from the truth, and it's because so many people are afraid. They're afraid, and that is why too many people now more than ever. I mean, let's face it. Last year, we've seen an increase in depression and anxiety and suicide rates and all of that. It's because I think too many people's judgment and the ability to fight for what they believe in, like you said, going to the gym, eating healthier. Why do you need to do that? Like I even made a post on my Facebook profile yesterday. By the way, I invested an entire bag for meal prepping. I spent $100 freaking on a meal prep bag because I said to myself, enough, Ivan, with the bullshit. You can do this. But
Mhm.
that's just it. It's like you do, or what most people struggle with is finding out, do the things that you want to do for yourself,
Mhm.
not anybody else.
Right.
And I think the social media world, the Instagrams and the Facebooks of the world, is clouding people's judgment because they're almost being brainwashed into like, nah, that's okay. I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't invest the time. It's okay just to work, a 9 to 5 job and barely make it. Like that's cool. But I'm gonna bitch about being broke.
Right. I mean, it's fine to work. I think it's fine to work a 9 to 5 job, and I think it's fine to not make a lot of money. Honestly, what it comes down to is what are your priorities. So for
Yep.
some people, money is not a motivator, and some people don't need a lot of money. They're very happy subsisting on less. They'd rather not have the headache, and they know how to provide for themselves without extravagant means, and
Yeah.
that's awesome. But it boils down to figuring out. I remember when I was 7 years old, my dad asked me, "What's the definition of success?" And
Mm,
I said, well, I think it varies for each person. It depends on the markers that you've set for yourself and if you've accomplished those, and what your priorities are. And my dad was very shocked, but very pleased. And I
yep.
think I was kind of surprised by his, the reaction that I got from him. And I said, why? Is that wrong? Did I define it wrong? And because I didn't give like a definition, I gave more of a personal kind of
Yeah.
impression of what I thought success was. And, it really boiled down to achievement and accomplishments. But I said, that varies. It depends on what's important to you. And he said most people would have defined it as material, accomplishment, like making a lot of money. And I said, but not everybody wants a lot of money. And that's really true. I think that,
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to people wanting to make money for the same reason that I'm not opposed to people wanting to look their best or, perform their best or, whatever it is that's important to them. But what I think, so,
Yeah.
you asked about the war against yourself and, you're talking about like social media, people being brainwashed. And I think, certainly we're seeing a lot of brainwashing, especially in 2020. We saw, the cheapest method of marketing is fear mongering, and the media is masters of it. And, certainly
Yeah.
we had the COVID crisis. I won't even call it a pandemic. The CDC said it doesn't even qualify as an epidemic. So I won't call it that. And I'm not saying, I just want to clarify for those listening, watching, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not saying it's not a real virus. I'm saying it doesn't qualify as a pandemic. There is a difference. It
Yeah.
has 99.98% survival rate for most people. Those over the age of 75, it's 99.95% survival rate.
Yeah.
It's pretty high, and people do die of all sorts of things. They die of the flu. It's tragic, but it happens. So I don't think you
Yeah.
can stop your life, but the media has used this as a great marketing tool to promulgate fear, which is a great tactic for controlling people. So I do think that's part of it. The brainwashing is absolutely a part of it. But I also think the other part of when you talk about social media in particular,
Yeah.
even the media, is distraction. A lot of people, what people fear, I think more than anything is, and most people are not honest about this, but they don't fear, and this goes back to the war against yourself, right? Most people,
Yeah.
if you ask them what they're afraid of, they'll talk about things that are external. People like to blame outside and point fingers because it's a lot easier. But if you were to get very honest with someone, I think most people, the things that they're really afraid of are internal. We're afraid of not living up to our own standards, our own dreams, our, not realizing the dreams that we have set out for ourselves,
Yeah. Yeah.
not living the life that we want to live. And those are things that, we're disappointing ourselves. I think that these are the things that terrify us more than anything. And
Yeah.
to grapple with our own challenges, our own weaknesses, our own limitations, I think that those things are actually really scary. And so the war against yourself is usually not acknowledging what those are and not being willing to face them head on.
Yeah.
And
You
so,
know, I wanted to go back to something that you said, that when your father asked you what's your definition of success when you were really young, and someone said this to me recently, and that they said, Ivan, do you remember that little boy? And they were talking around my age of like probably 7 to 12 roughly, because it was at the age of 12 actually when we started the immigration journey. um, and it really got me thinking about what is my definition of success. And I
right.
realized, holy fuck, Ivan, you spent 25 years of your life like like knowing what success is to you, but being so afraid to pursue it. Because like you said, when your father had asked you what's the definition of success, then most people respond with something materialistic. And that was my perception of it. Is it's like, well, I just wanted more money, I just wanted a better life, but I didn't flush it out. Like I didn't exactly know, like, okay, and now to me success is family, health and fitness, and a thriving business. Those are the three things. But it took all this time for me to truly put it in perspective for myself, and then really start putting all my energy towards that. And it wasn't until I finally, and this was probably 5 years ago, honestly, when I really, really, I said, okay, and I talked about this in the past. So number one, I knew it was family. I've always wanted family. So that's my definition of success. But number two was between business, entrepreneurship, and then health and fitness
Mhm.
also. But on the grander schemes, is so the family part of it, I had that down. I had wanted to be a father for as long as I would know. I mean, be married for a second time, having in a relationship prior that didn't work out. Definitely put a twist to things, but I just had to write it out basically because it was happening for a reason. So when that happened, I'm like, okay, well, one part, a dream, a goal of success is having family, and I've achieved that. But then number two and number three, it was like health and fitness. And mind you, I come from a background where it was okay to eat 5 course meals, God knows how many times per day. And so I became used to it. And I thought that was normal to eat steaks and kebabs and all kinds of fattening shit, and drink soda like crazy, because like that's how I was taught. But here's the thing is I had one of the biggest mental shifts when I realized that, Ivan, just because you were taught to eat like shit doesn't mean you have to eat like shit. And if you want, yeah, exactly.
You're
Because
you have control over what you put in your mouth.
exactly.
Yeah, you
Absolutely good point. And that's when I was like, well, Ivan, you want the dad bod now. So like take some action towards like making that fucking happen. And
do.
that means stop eating greasy shit, stop eating hamburgers, stop eating crap that's not good for you. And mind you, this has been one of my biggest struggle. But suddenly, health and fitness, where it was like number three, now it advanced to the second spot because I realized that, all right, so if I don't eat better And if I don't feel better about myself physically and emotionally, which stems from food, right? Because most people shove food in their mouths to feed that emotion to feel better about themselves,
Mhm.
right?
So
So
yeah, go
go
on.
ahead. No, go ahead.
I actually would say that it's a feedback loop, and
Hmm.
just like you were talking about, self respect and wanting to, get dressed and put yourself together. I think the same thing is true for your lifestyle habits, and that includes
Yeah.
your nutrition, your fitness. When you feel good about yourself, you make better choices. So it's and then you make those choices, and it reinforces you feeling better about yourself. And so
Yeah.
it is a feedback loop, and it's a positive feedback loop. But I think that's part of why, the truth of the matter is that exercise is not actually, a key component of weight loss. It's a myth. In fact, a lot of people who are not stringent about their nutrition end up gaining weight when they
Hmm.
start an exercise regime because they're hungrier. You're burning more. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, so, but what it does do, and in terms of like physique and like fitness goals, exercise is phenomenal, and it's the best antidepressant, anti-anxiety, all that. I can go on and on about the benefits of exercise, but
Yeah.
my thing in terms of physique, you don't actually need it. But what it does do is it typically changes people's behavior because
Yeah.
they don't want to quote unquote ruin the good work that they just did. They worked so hard. Physical labor is hard. Anybody, we live in an age because of the information age and the technology age where, this young generation thinks that hard work is sitting at a laptop. And I don't want to undermine, some of the great intellectuals that we have today
Right.
because there's certainly a value and I have tremendous respect for them. But, keyboard warriors are not working nearly as hard as a lumberjack out in, that
Right.
they're doing real physical work.
Yeah.
And kids today don't know a whole lot about that, and I include myself in that, but when you go to the gym or you go to, right, it doesn't have to be the gym, but any kind of physical training, you experience how hard it is. It's difficult. Your mind says, okay, we're done. Your body can keep going. Your mind is like, all right, this is hard. I don't want to do this. Why am I doing this?
Yeah. Yeah.
But after that, you're more likely to make better choices because you've just invested so much. It becomes cognitive
Mhm.
dissonance. So,
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and that was probably one of my biggest struggle for years. Honestly, I mean, I, I stopped counting of all the weight loss programs that I had been through, or different programs, and I know in part was my failure to be persistent with them because I was looking for instant results, and when I shifted my mindset towards like you said, it's a behavior. It's more of a behavior change, the way you feel about yourself, your perspective on things, your outlook. You become a little bit more logical and realistic and rational about things with exercise is when I really started to see. And that's why health and fitness really, escalated from the third spot in terms of priority to number two, and entrepreneurship and business, took a number three spot is because I realized that, well, if I eat better, first of all, I curb my heartburn. And mind you, I'm drinking coffee, but this is black coffee. And Dunkin' Donuts and Seattle's Best are the only types of black coffee that does not give heartburn. And how I was reminded of this actually this past Friday was at a meeting with a new client. We're going to meet at Starbucks, which I found out that their dining room was closed when I got there. So we
no,
couldn't even meet. We had to go elsewhere. But of course, I walked in to get to be a good customer and buy a cup of coffee. Well, I
right,
just got black coffee. And then like 2 hours later, I'm like, why do I have heartburn? Like I
right.
haven't had heartburn in months probably because again, making better choices of what I eat and what I put in my body. And then I realized that the Starbucks coffee, because it's burned for
Yeah,
extra darker, richer flavor, is
yeah,
that's what gave me heartburn. But
because
and that's exactly. It's acidic. That's
yeah.
right. And that's why, and I found Dunkin' Donuts and Seattle's Best being the only types of coffees that are not acidic. And it's that acid that
Cold
actually
brew would
causes heart.
probably there are some others I could recommend for you, but cold brew is probably going to be it tends to be lower acidity. But I wanted to get back to the
Yeah.
war on yourself. I think a
Yeah.
really good question for people to ask themselves. So for you, is now you've shifted the priority of what your goals are in terms of what defines success for you. But I
Mhm.
think, I was talking about people that are, we talked earlier about fear. And I think it's a really good question to ask, what would happen if I achieved my goals? Because I think this is, and we've alluded to this early on, like
Yeah.
earlier episodes, but I think what shocks people is that it's not so much fear of failure that terrifies people as much. It's
Yeah.
often that fear of success. They go hand in hand because the
Yeah.
more success that you actually have, the higher the stakes are, and the more likely to fail from there. And then when you fail from higher up, it's a bigger fall. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a really good question to ask. Is like, if I were to achieve this, how will my life change? And
Yeah.
how do you feel about that? And I think
Yeah.
that oftentimes is more why people sabotage themselves than the fear of
Yeah.
not.
That's a really good point, Courtney. And I've actually have asked that question myself many times.
Mhm.
And again, one of the reasons why I picked this topic is because there's a lot of entrepreneurs and dreamers and go-getters to watch and listen and
Yeah.
follow me, follow you on social media that are going to be exposed to this content. And I'm almost certain that they have asked themselves this very question
Yeah.
specifically. And I think in part, at least years ago, I was afraid of just what you said is my fear of succeeding in with family, with health and fitness, with business. And
Mhm.
now, from a business standpoint specifically, as I'm seeing this evolution of my business and my brand,
Mhm.
I think for one, I become even more immersed into it and a
Mhm.
much bigger believer that like that will actually happen. And I think that fear factor is slowly diminishing, not quite, but it's still diminishing at a faster rate because I'm starting to realize that, like you said, stakes are higher. When you
Mhm.
get in a better shape, stakes are higher. You got to perform at a higher level, right? With businesses, you got to perform at a different level, and then it escalates and grows and grows and grows. And I was afraid, but then I realized that, Ivan, this is what you wanted.
Right.
This is what you asked for. This is what you aspired for. And I think that's what people forget is just that. So talking about the war against yourself is just that. Well, you got to define what your priorities are, what your purpose and passion and what you want to accomplish, and then just be vigilant in pursuit of that.
And
And
why do you want those things? Because that,
right.
who knows his why can combat any
Mhm.
how. And that's a quote from Nietzsche, and it's really true. Like, if he'll figure out the how if you know your why. So.
Yeah. No, that's the why is really big. Absolutely. I'm a big believer of that is, and for me, why is because I want a better life. I want a better life for my family. I want a better life for my kids.
Mhm.
I want to be able to do the things that I never could do that, I didn't have access to, which includes travel, spending more time with my family. But the biggest thing is that, especially from a business standpoint, is the so as the business grows, it gives me the ability to create impact in the world and impact and influence other people. And I mean, I've had just 3 people over the last couple of weeks that I've talked to that I had no idea that I just influenced them on the things that I said. The things that I told them because they were questionable about their intentions. They were questionable about their goals and dreams. And I said, you know what, man? I've been there. It's okay. I get it. We all go through this, but you know what? What makes you different is when you keep pushing forward. You just be resilient in your pursuit because that's where people really stop in their tracks. I mean, how many people, how many entrepreneurs stop at in their tracks, whether it's building a business or family or health and fitness? Because
Yeah.
I know I have before they've put in the due time because well, my people in my network are not doing it. Health and fitness is not cool. I'll just eat a protein bar and I'll call that eating healthier. Like there's such a misconception that I realized that when I talk to people, including one of my newest clients, I had no idea that this guy was struggling mental with so many things and just having a deep convo for like an hour and a half after a workout was like, wow, his words was like, Ivan, like I've never really, connected, especially with a guy in such way. Not to mention you gave me so much to think about, like different perspective that I just really didn't see it that way before. And that's because I wasn't exposed. So again, as my personal brands, my business grows, is that it's the why. Going back to the why is because it's helping me impact other people and influence them and help them chase their goals and dreams and infuse more positivity in the world. I mean, that's why it's all of that,
Right.
really. Because let's face it, we can never have enough positivity in the world. Never. In fact, we've got a huge shortage of it right now more than ever, right?
Right.
So that's really important. Look, it's not hot, it's not sexy, like you said. The keyboard warriors versus the lumberjack. I mean, here's a prime example. My father, has a business that literally involves physical labor every single day, going out there and rolling up your sleeves and doing physical work. Has done it for 20 years, 20 plus years.
Wow.
And so, like, people can be quick to judge on
Yep.
things. They can be quick to assume, and especially in social media. And I've actually noticed this. It's really funny because I was never really the guy about how many likes or how many comments or how many shares or how many views. I've always been the guy about how does this message resonate with other people? Is it giving people value? So suddenly I found out that the majority of people don't really care. Like it's not a priority. They don't see it as value. And it's usually value that is intended, like this episode, the war against yourself, the value, the context that we're talking about is intended to help other people make better decisions,
Right.
follow their goals, find their why or their purpose, even.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, and this is true in social media, is that as the saying goes, you can only lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So it's
Yep.
like you can't force people to take action,
Yep.
but because they're the ones that have to take action. So at the end of the day,
Yep.
you can hear all the inspiration and motivation from, you and me, or anybody else in the social space. But the way you're going to be able to invoke change is by
Exactly.
taking action, like
Mhm.
literally getting up and saying, all right, today I'm going to make stride to eat a little bit better than I did yesterday. 1% better today than you were yesterday. And the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the
Right.
next day, until I think a friend of mine told me is that a good habit takes 21 days to
Yeah.
build,
Yep. Yep.
but it deteriorates in the split of a second.
Yep. That's right.
Isn't that crazy? So, like, you can go from, let's say having a better nutrition, right? And working towards that for 21 days to where, you build that momentum and it
Uh-huh.
becomes more of a natural thing. But then the next day you could say, I'm going to roll my ass down to the McDonald's drive through and give me a Big Mac meal because it just sounds good. So it's harder to resist,
So,
right?
well, here's the thing with that, though. You can make a choice like that, and it's a conscious choice. And if you build the habits, then you know that it's an isolated incident. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just like, let's say, let's take another analogy. If you're really, perspicacious with your banking, right? You're
Yeah.
really diligent in your finances, and then you're like, actually, I've got a little bit of surplus, and I'm going to go splurge. I'm
Yeah.
going to buy, maybe there's like a gadget you've really been wanting or a new computer, or
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that for the next 3 months you keep buying a computer a day. It means, okay,
Right.
I've been really diligent, I built good
Yeah.
habits, and now I have a little bit to play with, and I'm going to treat myself. That's okay. That's why you build the habits. You build the habits so that you are conscious of the choices that you're making that are outside those habits. They don't become your default. That trip to
Yeah.
McDonald's is not your default. It's an exception. It's an exception to the
Yeah.
rule. And it's fine. I mean, I don't really advocate McDonald's ever, but for some people they like it. And there's nothing wrong with, I certainly have my vices in all areas of life. That
Yeah.
we're human. We have vices. But the key is to build those habits so they're so strong, they fortify you against those urges to default into negative habits. So that the negative habits are the exception. They become they're the exception, the treat, if you will. I don't
Yeah.
even love to call it a treat because I think people create paradigms psychologically around that. I'd rather just see that, you have really good habits, and then every now and then you're really conscious that you're making a choice that's different from your typical habits. And I support that.
No, that's a really good point, actually, and it actually validates. Well, the example that I use with McDonald's is
Mhm,
because here's an example. I've been stagnant at the same weight for 4 weeks now,
mhm,
and now as I'm evaluating the choices that I made, is in part that I made too many exceptions to my habits. Like
right.
I would follow, my trend has been Monday through Friday usually. Like I'm eating on my nutritional diet, so I'm eating what I'm supposed to be eating. I meal prepped now finally, so this is my actually first week. I'm
Mhm,
actually going to be more accessible as opposed to, because I was preparing my food, and that was another problem, is that, but it wasn't like ready made to where I could just pop it in the microwave and warm it up. But now
right,
it is. So
right.
I'm interested in seeing how that's going to fluctuate. But as I'm looking at the last 4 weeks, is that I realized that at least for me, I'm one of those people that if I just stick like 7 days a week, and every week to like, here's my diet, I have no exception, I
Mhm.
tend to actually burn out
Right.
because I feel so limited. I
Most
feel
people are.
like, yeah, so I feel very limited. And so that's a really good point that you said. So, like, it's usually Friday nights or like Saturdays. I'll have like a
Mhm,
cheat meal, which usually involves like, having dinner with the family out.
mhm,
My son likes to have pizza. My daughter likes to have pizza also.
mhm.
So, like, it's almost like a tradition on Friday nights and sometimes on Saturdays too. So, that's a really good point that you mentioned, is because I think, as human beings, is that, we will become kind of burnt out, I think.
Mhm.
And but the real differentiating factor that you mentioned that I really really want to reiterate is the fact that as long as you acknowledge that it's an exception and that
Well,
you don't make it a normal thing.
and that's why you have habits, because then you default to your habits, right? And so
Yeah,
this is a veering from the habits. It becomes
yeah,
the exception.
yeah,
It is not your habits, and that's what's really important. But you touched on something where you said like you get burned out, and a lot of people are like that. But I think the most important
mhm,
thing is to find habits that work for you, because everybody is different,
yeah,
so it needs to be something that you can really make a habit. Some people need to be, very, very rigid. They cannot veer,
yeah,
or they can only have one exception. Some people like to have that routine where they have a built-in exception, but
yeah,
whatever it is, that's why you build habits, because you're finding what it is you can stick with. People always ask me like, what's the best exercise? What should I do? I'm like, the one you'll do. And it's really true. Obviously there's nuances depending on your goals.
yeah,
Different exercises going to create slightly different results. But for the most part, it's really about the habits. It's like, well, what are you going to do? What do you enjoy? And that's the same when you're building any kind of habit. Like you talk about entrepreneurs, right? I think
yeah,
one of the things entrepreneurs really struggle with, because most entrepreneurs are creatives, right? Creatives don't like hyper rigidity. They're
mm,
kind
yeah,
of free spirits in a lot of
yeah,
ways.
yep,
They want to push the envelope. They like a little spontaneity, and they don't want to be boxed in. But if you're an entrepreneur, as you know, you have all sorts of balls that you're juggling that are in the air, and you got to catch all of them. They're all over the place. And
yep,
what's really going to help you is having time management. And that is something that, I think a lot of people really, really struggle with. I always say that, it's one of the things I'm going to drill into my children, like the importance of time management. And it
yeah,
is a skill. It comes much more naturally to some than to others. And I think it is difficult for entrepreneurs because of their creative nature. But creating, so I've heard all sorts of strategies like, oh well, you just color block in your calendar, or you make up a schedule that's really rigid for yourself every day. And you know what, those things don't work for everybody. So it's about building that habit. So some people like to have every hour blocked out, and they have to have it written down. They have to have the whole week laid out, and that works for them. Other
yeah,
people have a little bit more leeway. There needs to be some structure, but maybe they're like, okay, I have 2 days a week where we kind of see what pops up and I do those. Or we block it half the day. But and obviously you have certain obligations. Everybody has certain
Yeah.
obligations where they have to be at a certain place, certain time, or do a certain thing at a certain time. But that's a habit. So some entrepreneurs are like, well, I'm going to block out this time for me time. So it's either their journaling or their workout, or
Yeah.
they structure that at a certain time every day, and that works for them because it creates a sense of routine for them. It creates habit for them. But
Yeah.
that's really what it is. It's about finding what it is you're going to stick with, and then 21 days later, almost a month later, you've built something that is natural for you and that you would default to, as opposed to something that might be a more destructive pattern.
Yeah. No, that's a really so in respect of time, that's really I think the key message that you mentioned, Courtney, is the fact that finding what works for you. Winning the war against yourself is really about finding what works for you. And you're right, I hate fucking calendars. I've always been a digital guy. I hate what a lot of the traditional stuff that people do. So, and that's me. That's me. And that's in part I think has been a challenge with business, with life, with family, with health, shit, fitness also, because I was so focused on, well, people would tell me this is what it's going to work. Well, it's not going to work for me. I got to figure out what works for me. That might work for me. So I try it, right? Does it work? Okay, great. It doesn't work. All right, what's the alternative to it? And that's really the key message, like you said, is just that to win the war against yourself in life, in relationships, in business, is you have to find what works for you. What is it that you want? Why you're going to do it, what's the purpose behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Courtney, thank you so much as always. These are some of the deepest combos that we have usually, and I look forward to these every week. And I'm excited that we're able to jump on and do the live episode. And for those watching and listening, the audio portion is going to be available on all the major outlets later on today that you can download it and stream it on your device of your choice. But just in closing, congratulations on everything that you got going on. I know with the podcast and new business and relocating. I think 2021 is really slowly starting to fall into play for you, and I'm really really excited to see about the things. Holy shit, we're already in March, so what happens in the next couple of months?
Mhm.
So thank you again, Courtney.
Thank you.
Again, without sounding like a broken megaphone, truly enjoy these convos. And for everyone watching and listening, make sure you subscribe to the RAS Project so you can check out future episodes like this one. And Courtney, have an amazing day.
You too. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.